Hello and welcome to another edition of my Southern Exposure site. Myself and Naraji Reinsing are here with you. That beautiful little vixen down there in the corner that I'm fingering, not actually fingering, but pointing to, in the little box down there. Today is a very special day in America, the way that I look at it. November 9th, 2020. Now we know who the real winner is officially, publicly, and welcomed around the world, which in this instance happened to align with my personal beliefs as well as my beautiful co-host, Rajan Reinsing. But for some people out there, it's a day of sadness. The good thing is that the majority of people are extremely happy. So I've had a pretty eventful week, to say the least, busting my ass, so to speak, literally and figuratively. And I'll share that story later, but over to you, Raji. What do you got to say?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about this show, and I am ecstatic. I am so happy that Biden and Harris won. Oh my God. I was like praying. And you know what? Biden will make mistakes. Biden will not be perfect. There's no perfect president. There's no perfect anybody for that matter. We all make mistakes. But at least we'll have a president that invokes unity and truth, and not one that lends license to a lot of these hateful people around the country. In my lifetime, I've never seen it like this. I mean, I was born after 1964, but I was talking to a cousin of mine who was around during that time. She's my great cousin, and she said that that was the last time she saw the racial tension like it is now in during the civil rights movement. So I really do feel that one of the biggest reasons for that is because we've had President Trump as our president. So anyway, it hopefully there'll be a new day. And what I especially loved about Biden is that he reached out to the people that didn't vote for him. He said, even to the, I think it's 70 million that voted for Trump, I am your president too, and I'm here to work for you too. And I thought that was big. So, we'll talk more about the political thing. I didn't bust my ass this week, thankfully. Thankfully, I didn't bust my ass. But no, I think my main thing this week would be the election because I was so engaged and I really, really, really wanted to know. And then on a side note, I gotta say, go Camilla, honey. Half Indian, South Asian like me. There's definitely a connection in that regard. I mean, but besides that, I think she's very qualified. So anyway, yeah, back to you, Joseph. I know you got something to talk about that after yours.
Well, I mean, my ass can wait. That's for sure. I
Okay.
think the more important thing, because it's not going nowhere. It's down there, but it's a funny story to share, only because I'm all right, but it could have gone another way. Anyway, so for a lot of people, I think here in Southern Florida, we had this hurricane tropical storm descend on us like, I don't know, Rudy Giuliani trying to resuscitate a legal career, or I don't know.
Ron DeSantis.
I got another name for him. You
I
know
know you
that.
do. I know.
But I don't want to do that. But all joking aside, we had this storm that popped up out of nowhere while we were all watching the election stuff unfold. And yourself, just like me, and a lot of other people, we knew that things were moving in the right path. towards good, but you still had that little nagging thing in your head that's like, what if it's going to be like it was last time, where we're supposed to be going towards good and then it changes?
Yeah.
So, but with all of our focus to that, a lot of people, at least in Southern Florida, they forgot that we had a storm sitting out there, and no one prepared for it. What I want to ask to you, Raji, is how did everything work out for you? After you're done, I'll share what happened to us, because I think we're not the only people in Southern Florida that are listening or watching. I'm sure that your story, as well as mine, will probably ring true to people who love our show, which is now over 71,000 views. And we're getting people in South Africa, all around the world, almost every state in the United States, LGBTQ plus A. The allies are starting to pay attention also as well. So what's your perspective, and how did things how did things work out for you with this storm that just passed by?
Okay, so I've been down here in South Florida for many years, many years. And I've lived through some hurricanes, honey. I would say 4 really bad ones. I was here when Andrews hit in the early 90s. I went through, I think it was Rita in 99, Wilma in 2005, and then there was one 3 years ago in 2017. Yeah, I think, yeah. I forgot.
I think that was Irma, because that's
Irma.
the one that, yeah.
Irma, yeah. So, and besides that, South Florida is tropical. It's tropical. It's almost like you're living in the Caribbean, but you're in America, because, it's a part of America. But because we're a peninsula and we go pretty far out, we're like literally in the Caribbean, just about. I mean, so because of that, we have very tropical weather, which means that in our rainy season, we get torrential rain, thunderstorms. And, anytime you're dealing with that, things can happen. Driving in it is even worse. So to answer your question about last night, I wasn't too concerned because, like I said, I had lived through the 4 hurricanes, and compared to them, last night was like, like it was just nothing. It was nothing basically. But I have to say, coming home, I did get a little nervous for a minute because I was out and I came home in the nighttime, and by then we were experiencing the worst of it. And there was a lot of wind and rain. And I turned down the street and I saw a car ahead that had stalled and it had its flashers on. And then when I looked real good, I was like, oh my God, I'm like literally going to be driving into a lake. So I had already kind of gotten into it a little bit. I turned my ass around, honey, and I took another direction. But anything can happen. So I just drove really slowly, and thank God I made it home okay. There was no flooding on my street. I'm here in Hollywood, Florida, USA. And but there was some parts of Hollywood that were flooded. And let me tell you, I passed a shopping center yesterday and it was like a damn river. I mean, it was just about the whole shopping center parking lot was flooded, and the water was pretty high. So, we here in South Florida, we're under sea level anyway. And then when something like this happens, it really affects us and as far as flooding. So yeah, Joseph, you have on the other hand, you have a story to share. Oh my God. Thank God it didn't go in the other direction and hit you all, but I'll let you tell the story.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up was because of what happened to me. But the other thing is that it's important for people to know, who care about you and watch you in your area where you live directly, about what happened to you. But for me, we didn't have any actual real damage, so to speak, to the house that we live in. But around 7 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, is when I woke up to what sounded like explosions. So I couldn't quite understand why that was happening. And when I came out, my partner was like, I saw these bright lights. It didn't look like lightning, didn't know what it was. I'm like, well, I heard explosions. So we looked out the back door. Basically around 7 a.m. on Saturday, one of an electrical line at the back of not our property, but 2 properties down, snapped. And every time that it flew around and hit a tree would catch on fire. And every time it hit metal, it would make that explosion sound. So, and it kept doing that over and over and over again. And I'm kind of a little bit of a Miss Kravitz, to be honest with you. Like, if something happens on the street, I'm gonna walk out there. If I see people walking around with guns, I'm be like, who are you pointing that gun at? I mean, seriously, I don't know exactly what my problem is, but I kind of like walk into the situation to find out because I'm nosy. And then after I assess the situation, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stay inside. So I looked, I saw, and then my partner was like, why do you gotta be Mrs. Kravitz and be up everything? That's not even on our property. I'm like, well, but that little line could actually hit our chain link fence and then set our whole chain link fence basically electrical. So I called FPL. It was basically 15 minutes later, they showed up.
Wow.
Which I've never had that happen before. Raji, you know, that's not normal.
No.
They showed up like lickety split, but that was before it started getting rough. But they were here, I think, around 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. I think it was around 8 a.m. they showed up. But I have to give kudos and props to FPL for coming over instantly because I told them about the trees catching on because it was raining off and on, you know, yesterday. I mean, I should say Saturday. And it was one of those situations where it something caught on fire and then it would douse out, and then something would catch on fire and then it would douse out. Actually, it was yesterday, Sunday. What happened was, while they were chopping down the trees that created part of the problem, a big, gigantic tree, I can't remember the name of it. It's a certain kind of tree. What's the name of that tree, Ricky? Ricky. Damn it. I can't remember the name of that damn tree. But I live directly behind Wilton Wings in Fort Lauderdale. So they have a gigantic tree that's probably 20 feet around. It's been there for a long time. Both ends of the property. There was like one at one end of the property and another at the other end of the property. The one tree fell down during Irma, and it's still there.
Oh my God.
Don't know how that's legal, but it's still there. So this tree, after all the saturation and rain and everything else, it fell while the guys from FPL took a break after finishing cutting the other trees. That created the problem. But it turns out 9 chances out of 10, the big tree is what created the problem in the first place. And when it fell, it ripped off the Comcast cable line off of our house, which is fine because it's not like Comcast works anyways, so why even bother? So it ripped off the line. We're AT&T people, so AT&T works. It might cost a little bit more, but it definitely works. So it ripped off the line, and the ironic part about it is, just before it happened, myself and my partner were talking, along with his mother, and we were saying, we've been telling FPL, we've been trying to communicate with the guy over at Wilton Wings. We work with our neighbors, both sides, and the neighbors did everything that they could do. And we said, oh, good Lord, I wish that it would come down. And I'm not kidding you, Raji.
Mm-hmm.
We walked inside, had that conversation. The tree was standing up outside. We walked inside, had the conversation. less than 5 minutes later, that tree was down.
Down.
It had nothing to do with us.
You
But
can't ask for it.
But I mean, the only good thing is in this instance that the tree fell into the parking lot where there were no cars.
Thank God.
No one was back there. And a very clean, I mean, the whole tree root ball pulled out because of the level of saturation. Unfortunately for our next door neighbor, it completely dislodged one of their palm trees. There was a concrete fence in the back that was along the back fence line, so that got completely removed. And then it also was such a large tree with such a large root system, it also ripped up part of their chain link fence as well. For us, it didn't affect us as negatively as it did. We just had a little bit of a section, but our yard is still fenced in. But then I thought that was like the extent of the damage. And then I walk out the front door this morning, and then I see there's a giant tree in the middle of the street, 2 doors down the other direction. So the part that's creepy is that you think that things are okay, but those trees have been there for such a long time. But if there's enough saturation, you never know really when they're going to fall.
Exactly.
And I drive that direction probably 5 times a day, going in that direction. And I just feel very blessed that I knew to be home during the worst part of what was going on. But a lot of people don't know that. But I mean, that tree was a really big tree, and it fell, and it covered the entire street. So if that would have fallen on a car, it would have completely crushed the car, or it would have at least trapped the person inside. But luckily, nothing happened bad with that. And then the only thing we had happen was a couple of branches fell off of one of our mango trees that we were planning on pruning anyway, so not a big deal. And then just having a little bit of a fascia board problem where the Comcast thing fell off, but it's not like Comcast is worth anything anyways. So, I mean, I'm just saying, it's not like they're an advertiser. And if they were an advertiser, I would say fix your stuff. Otherwise, people can't communicate. So, but I got to give some props to FPL. They came out instantly, fixed our problem, and that was that. But that's my story with that. I'm gonna bring up this whole election thing with you because it's a really big deal, especially for someone like you, because you identify as Indian, African American, a person of multicultural relation, and also female, and also trans LGBTQ. And this is the first president who has ever acknowledged or said out loud during his acceptance speech, or I should say the first one of them, who actually called out people of color.
Yeah.
So my question for you, Raji, is tell me about how you felt or what you think or what was going through your mind when you were watching it, because I was watching it too.
Well, I felt extremely inspirational. Like I felt inspiration watching it. Hopeful. I felt hopeful. To all the Republicans that didn't vote for them and had their reasons, I swear I've heard everything from if Joe dies, Camilla's going to become president and this country's going to become a socialist country. And I'm like, fuck, excuse my language. I'm like, hell no, it's not going to become a socialist.
Now, okay, well, first of all, let me just say this, Raji. First of all, I've already cussed twice. So this is going to be an 18 and over pre-qualifier like it was last week. So please do not mince your words. Say what you want to say. Show what you want to show.
Yeah. No. So yeah, and my thing is the whole thing with capitalism versus socialism. I mean, America has kind of always been a mixed bag a little bit, in the sense that we're a capitalistic society, but at the same time, we have socialist programs like Social Security, which is a government run program that we people pay into, but it's government run, you know, and also I made this comment in one of the videos I did this week, where I said, all these Republicans walking around talking about less government, less government. Well, I'm sure none of them sent their stimulus check back, a check from the government. So I say all of that to say that you can't have socialism doesn't work because and communism doesn't work. It looks great on the books. When you read, oh, everyone can be equal and equal this and equal that, but we as human beings aren't designed that way, because most of us, when we set a goal, we work towards it, we attain it, and then what's the next thing we're doing? We're setting another goal. We want to grow and go higher and get bigger, and so it doesn't really work. And then also, a completely capitalistic society won't work either, because life isn't fair. People are not, everyone isn't born on the same equal playing field. So, for many different reasons. So, there's people in society that do need help. They need assistance and help. So, anyway, um, that this socialist thing will never happen. And I believe that it was one of the Republican strategies to use against Kamala and Biden, and they used it especially with the Hispanic community, the Cuban community, to be specific, because them with the whole Cuba thing and Castro, and a lot of them fell for it. But so anyway, uh, whatever your argument is, the fact is, I believe that Biden is just like a decent guy. Like, he's a regular guy that has worked many years in government and, given back to society in different ways. And I don't see anything malice there. I actually posted congratulations to them, Biden and Harris, on my Facebook page, and there was some comments. Like, one was like, "Girl, I love you, Raji, but girl, you need to wake up. Biden is a child molester." And I'm like, "Where the fuck are you all getting this shit?" But see, this is the thing. On both sides of it, there's propaganda that comes from the different sides. I think the Republicans do it a little more though, but anyway, I know Democrats are guilty of it too. Um, and so it's like, really, I'm not getting any of that with him. And like I said, he's gonna make mistakes. He won't be perfect, and the same with Kamala. But at least, like, it seems like they have good intentions for the country and for all Americans, not rich, white, conservative, Republican Americans only. A combination, like what the country really is. This country looks so different than it used to look. America does not look like the America that it was in the 1950s or 1940s. I mean, it's very different. We're a lot more of a melting pot now. There's a lot more mixed people. I mean, so it's a different America. And because of that, we need to, and anyone in government especially, needs to be conscious of that, and advocate and work for the people, not a segment of the people or a certain population of the people, for the people, all Americans. So I was very inspired. I loved, Kamala talking about her mother, who immigrated here from India, and she spoke about how, she's standing there because of her mother, and the things she instilled in her. I love that tribute because I think we all have someone, sometimes more than one person, that we really can honor and say, because of that person, I'm this. I have these morals, or I'm like this. And so I love that part about it. And yeah, and this is the other thing I love, and I'll throw it back to you, Joseph, that they're starting today with a COVID task force. It was like Biden is like, fuck this, we're not wasting any time. We're getting to work. And so I love that. I'll just say this and then I'll throw it back to you. I had a little bit of a debate with a trans friend of mine. She's a transgender woman. She's a white transgender woman, and she voted for Trump. And she was saying, "Oh, this and that." It was. Well, the topic came up about race in this country and like how volatile it's been lately. And she was like, if black folks in this country keep, harping on what happened in the past, and they tell themselves they can't do it because they're black, they won't get anywhere. And look at Obama and all and other successful black people that didn't harp on those things, and they just went out there and worked hard, and progressed and achieved and became successful. So I said to her, I said, listen, I said, everything you said, I agree with. Like, you don't harp on shit. Like, things happen. We have to move forward. We have to move forward. You don't have to. You can wallow in it, but the advisable thing would be to move forward and past it, and and look for a better, or work towards a better future. But at the same time, I said we can't walk around denying that because of 350 years of slavery and another 100 years of Jim Crow, there is systematic racism that still exists in this country. you know and then the thing about the police came up, and she's like, well, I don't, um there's more white people that get shot by the police. And I was like, I said, you know what, maybe statistically, because of the population, it works out that way. But when you're looking at the individual cases, I'm like, no. I said, there's definitely a difference between the way the police interact and treat people of color as opposed to white people. And I said, this video came out last week, from Philadelphia. A guy, African American guy, he was having mental issues, a mental breakdown. He had a knife in his hand. He did have a knife in his hand. And the police ended up shooting him 14 times. His mother had called the police for help, to get him help. And they ended up shooting him 14 times, and he died. And I started to think about the different white men that have gone out and done shit, like the one in Colorado that shot up the movie theater. And the police got him into custody without incident. The Spelman Douglas shooting, they got him into custody without incident. Um, the guy here in South Florida, some years back, that was on drugs and ended up attacking those people and literally almost biting their faces off. Police got him into custody without incident. A few weeks ago, the 17-year-old white guy walking down the street with a gun, and the police are waving to him, got him into, yes, exactly, got him into custody without incident. And I said, there's definitely a difference. I said, if those men were black, I could almost guarantee that they would have been shot. They would have been shot, probably dead. And I'll throw it back to you now, Joseph. Just let me ask you this: are the police trained that when they disengage their weapon, they're to shoot to kill and not just shoot to disable? Because I swear, it seems like once they disengage, they're killing you.
I can't answer that question nationally across the board, but in general, from what I've pulled up, state by state, law by law, about 20 states, they are trained to kill first. And if it's a situation where they, quote unquote, deem that their life is in danger, which it could be a flashlight in someone's pocket that looks like a gun, and then that deems that that's a danger. Or it could be a knife in someone's hand, and that's a danger. But I agree with you completely. It's one of those things. Well, this is actually a letter opener and a very nice one. But I mean, it's one of those things where I completely agree with you. And racial profiling has been done for a long time. I think that to get back onto topic with Kamala and Biden, I think that we're truly at a precipice of being able to hopefully start a journey to move past this. Because Biden has known for a long time. His first presidency attempt was 1987, and I didn't realize that. And then he failed a second time. The third time was the charm. And one of the first things that he said, well, actually, there's so many firsts. It's almost, I don't even know what to say, because when I was watching, I started to cry, and I came out barely able to walk. I'll explain that later. Barely able to walk, hobbling out of the bed. And my partner was watching TV and fell asleep on the couch. And I started crying. It's like, I can't believe this is happening finally. I can't believe that's actually happening, that we're doing this. I mean, we're actually doing this. We're actually going to have a female vice president, first of all, which is great, but it took this long to get there. We're going to have a person of color, actually multiple colors, who, I mean, that's those things. And the most votes ever in recorded history.
Yeah.
In the entire United States ever. The most recorded votes that were mail-in. And this all happened during one of the worst diseases that is affecting the entire planet. And the people in the United States have had enough. And they chose to change things and come out and do what was right. And you have the Democrats, you have the Republicans, and I agree with you completely, Raji. I'm an independent. I'm a registered independent. So when I went to the voting polls, and you know, as well as everybody else, at least in our region, that they had a proposition on there that people who have no party affiliation can now officially vote for what's it called? Primaries.
For the primary, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it passed. It passed. So the great thing is now someone like me, who is an independent, can vote for the primary.
Exactly.
I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, black, white, gay, straight, bi, lesbian, trans, Asian, Caucasian, if you're from Budapest or India, I don't give a flying fuck. Seriously. I really don't care. All I care about is that what you do is the right thing. And you got a good heart. That's all that I care about. It doesn't matter You could be a 15-year-old, like, what's her name? Thornburg?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the name? That little kind of creepy looking girl? The girl, I mean, I don't want to offend anybody by saying creepy looking, but she's got so much power. When you look at her, you can feel it. So it's a little strange for most people that are in their close to 50s or over than that to understand that a 16-year-old child might be smarter than you. But Thornburg is very smart. She's the one who started the whole, not started, but she helped push forward how important climate change is. And it might be hard to understand that someone who is younger than you knows better than you, but sometimes it is what it is.
Out of the
They might be smarter.
Yeah.
They might be smarter.
Yeah.
Because they don't care about some of this stuff. And then some of those people that are younger are just force-fed, trained with all the evil stuff. But I felt really good, really positive. I was so happy to see the people that came out to support Biden after the election went through, in almost every video that I saw all across the world, not just the United States. I don't have mine here, but almost every one of them had a mask on. I would say maybe 85% of what I saw, they had a mask on. They understood how important it is that just because you're doing something that's important to you, that you don't put somebody else at risk potentially. And you can still do what you want to do. It was nice to see that. And it was nice to see him reach across the aisle to everybody, because we're not used to that, only because of the orange-faced monster for the last 4 years, the cartoon character, basically. So I can't wait. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say because it's just negative. So I'm going to focus on the good stuff. I can't wait for us to continue to move forward in a positive direction together and actually start to build back better together, because we have to figure out a way to do it. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to cuss at me. You don't have to take a machete with you. You don't have to take a gun with you to go and go to your state office representatives or sit at the polling location with 6 guns underneath your side pockets to show how powerful you are with a diesel truck, double dually, and apparently I would presume a small penis, because you have to compensate somehow. But you don't have to do any of those things. You can actually communicate, talk, understand, and the most important part is listen. I think that's part of the reason why people like watching our show, Raji. Seriously.
Yeah.
You have your perspective, I have my perspective, and every person who comes on the show has their own perspective. And it doesn't mean that we have to always agree, but we can respect each other's opinions. But at some point, if your opinions continue to go in different directions, you have to decide when to cut things off, which I've done that. I've made that decision for some people that were connected to the show. And some people had other things going on, so then they had their own thing. But I think that it's definitely, like I said before, we're going through a battle for good and evil, and hopefully good will overcome. I got a funny story to share about Uranus. I mean, technically, my anus.
Uranus.
But that's like a home handyman thing. I'll share that a little bit later. As you see me shuffle over and go from cheek to cheek, it's for a really good reason, that's for sure. But you brought up a couple of different things that you mentioned, and I want to ask you a couple questions. So, in reference to the Jim Crow stuff and also so many years of slavery,
Yeah.
do you think, because let's keep our focus with black slavery or immigrant slavery that was brought in, because you had sexual slavery from people of color that were raped, people who worked, and everything else. Those two things, I think, were the most. Basically, people that the women were raped and the men they basically forced to work. And also the slavery of the Native Indians as well, that was forced upon them. So my question for you is, do you think that it's even possible to overcome something like that? Ever? That's my first question. The second thing is, do you think it's possible for it to happen while you and I are alive? You're pretty young. I'm pretty young. I think we each at least have another 40 years, hopefully. Right? I want to live to be over 100.
I can see us too now at 105.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, we each have at least 50 to 60 years, hopefully. So, do you think it's possible that we can address it and resolve it in just 50 years? Or do you think it's something that's always going to remain, because you're talking about 450 years that created the problem?
Yeah.
And right now, we're just starting to actually publicly address it with a person of color who is in a position of power, and having a person who, quote unquote, should be blamed as a white person actually acknowledge that it is even a problem, like Joe Biden did. It's never been acknowledged before. Now it's out there. What do you think about those two questions?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, the civil rights movement was in 1964, and that's been 56 years ago. So 56 years to 450 years. Yeah, it's a definitely very unbalanced situation. We've come a long way, and I don't want to disregard the strides that have been made for people of color in this country, but there's still a long way to go. And I think this is a human lesson that we all have to learn. Because if you look around the world, in America, it's race, but sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's tribal, sometimes it's class. I mean, look at Ireland, the Protestants and the Catholics. Look at Africa. You want Rwanda, it was tribal, all Black African people fighting against each other and slaughtered over 100,000 people because I'm on one tribe and you're on another. Look at India, it's the class system. Right now in Myanmar, you have the Buddhist majority who is basically, and hopefully it's coming to an end, but there was genocide the last number of years against the Muslim minority, the Rohingya people. And sorry if I mispronounced that, but they had to actually flee their country and go to another country. I think a lot of them went to Bangladesh. But my point is, it's always something. The city people against the country people. A friend of mine, I think this is in Switzerland, it was a part of Switzerland, and she says there was the mountain people against the city people. I mean, like, it's always something. The redheads against the blondes. I mean, it could be anything. And I think we as human beings, if we're ever going to see true unity and harmony, each and every one of us within ourselves have to make a decision and a true effort to get past the get past the differences that we all have as human beings, in the sense of, instead of looking at it as a bad thing, look at it as a good thing. Like, diversity is a good thing. It adds to the world. It's if everyone looked the same and acted the same and was the same, it'd be a pretty boring world. The whole point is, the reason why there's diversity on so many different levels is because it's supposed to be that way. It's been that way, forever, thousands and thousands of years. And as we've evolved, over time, you see the diversity. We live on planet Earth. Planet Earth is a part of an infinite universe. And beyond that, existence. I mean, they can't even measure how many universes there are. Um, and I mean, we're fighting over color, and we're fighting over, like, I'm Muslim, you're Christian, or I'm Buddhist and you're Hindu. I mean, it on the larger scope of things, this stuff is so petty, but then on the flip side, it isn't petty when you're talking about one group ostracizing and basically, committing, I would say, committing genocide in many cases on some level against the other group. These things can become serious. This whole thing of, like, separatism and, like, us segregating, and I know that by nature people tend to be tribal, tribal in nature. Like, you kind of gravitate to like-minded and like looking people like yourself. Like culture, like my culture and your culture, we have the same culture, so we probably would gravitate to each other more. But if you really take time out to look at the beauty of the world, I mean, when you have an open mind, you can learn so much. And I found that, like, in situations for me, as I've lived life and I kept an open mind, there was stuff that I could have missed out on. But because I had an open mind, I was able to, experience something different, and get a different perspective on things, and in many cases have a great time, enjoy the experience. So I say all of that to say that I think it's possible one day, but it's going to take great effort. It's going to take a united global effort to for it to truly happen. Nothing is impossible. And hey, I bet you those slaves that were in the fields, the ones that lived and died in slavery 400, 350 years. Can you imagine how many generations of people were born, they lived, and they died in slavery, but had the hope that one day it would end? And it happened. It happened, so I do. So in closing, before I toss it back to you, Joseph, is I just say that I really do. I do feel that it is possible, but it's going to take a group of us as human beings working together. And let me just say this before you take it over. Um, when we die, we don't take any of this with us. We don't even take these bodies with us. So really, like, the only thing we take is our consciousness and the living vibrational energy that gives us life. Okay, with the consciousness, and so really, are we gonna really, like, live our lives hating one another for what? Because if you're someone white or you're someone black, when you die, you're leaving your black body and your white body. It's like, it's, you know what I mean? It's like, really, if you're looking at the larger picture of things, like, man, like really. Anyway, I can go on and on. And I go, sometimes I get into tangents, but the reason why is because it's so layered. Like, these issues are so layered, and then they're also connected in many ways. So I'm going to connect it back to you now, buddy.
Okay, so thank you for answering the general question. I'm going to follow up to see if you think during our lifetime, if we can actually make some measured progress about race separating us on the entire planet.
I think so. I think we have. I mean, as a trans person in my lifetime, and I'm in my 50s, I'm 53. I remember, hell, even 10 years ago, being trans was like so much more difficult. And it was people like myself, not to pat myself on the back, but a lot of us that were like doing activism, fighting, fighting the good fight, blood, sweat, and tears. You know how many places I spoke at through the Yes Institute? The Yes Institute was, oh, is that my baby? Is that my baby in the background? So
you can clearly hear Karina being a little crotchety.
yes. But yeah, so like through the Yes Institute especially, I spoke at so many venues, universities, public libraries, different forums and panels on transgenderism. And this was in the day when it was very misunderstood, and people were very ignorant about it. But all of those forums and speeches and talks and presentations, it was like a pebble in the pond, like you throw it in and you see the ripple effect. Because I always kept in mind that I'm speaking in front of this class, like let's say it was at FIU, and these students are students that are going to eventually graduate, go out into the world, and probably one day encounter someone that's transgender like me. So what I say, and how I educate people can make so much of a difference. And so that's what I kept in mind as I did my activism over the years. And so I say all of that to say that basically, I mean, like, God, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, such a difference, than it is today. And for trans people here in America, in this country, in America, because I don't want to forget the trans people around the world that are dealing with some really volatile situations, and actually life and death situations on a daily basis. But speaking from the perspective of here in America, I'm definitely seeing some progression in our civil rights movement. So I can compare that to color and say that, if we each do our part and try to make an effort, we're working towards it. Maybe one day we will get to it. But we've seen difference already. I mean, hell, we had the first female vice president of color. Amazing.
Yes, I agree completely with you. So I want to just tell people about how they can watch some very original content that is available to you at home. You can visit www.mysouthernexposuremediagroupllc.com. That is, quote unquote, our parent company. MySouthernExposure.site is part of their programming. The idea with it is to offer programming to everybody around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My main focus is LGBTQ. Sorry, can't help myself because that's me. But that doesn't mean that I don't like those A's that are out there. Not the double A's or the triple A's or the quadruple A's. All of those allies that are out there, I understand that that you want other programming also as well. So the whole premise or the idea with our network that we are creating, myself and Raji, and a lot of other people that are all working together to create original content. People just like you at home. You too could be part of our programming lineup. So please visit www.mySouthernExposureMediaGroupLLC.com. You can see everything that I just said easily on your desktop, laptop, or cell phone, smartphone, tablet, whatever. But there are a lot of options. So if you like to watch our show, which I presume you do because you're watching it, then we are a little tiny drop in the bucket. Even though we're fabulous, I think that we will probably have a lot more fabulous things out there for everyone else to see as well. So please visit. We have some great promotional offers for you. If you just want to be billed once a month, $4.99 a month for all the programming that we have a 3-month promotional offer, which brings it down to $3.99 a month. So only costs $11.97. We have another offer, $2.99 a month for prepaying for 6 months, which brings it down to $17.94 a month. And then if you're a rock star and you want to spend $23.88. Yeah, you heard me right. $23.88. This is the bargain basement discount. It's a fire sale. Basically, that breaks down to $199 a month to prepay for 12 months of programming. And we will be adding a lot of programming from home handyman shows, DIY, gardening, health, music, entertainment, everything that you could possibly think of, including Law's own cooking show and several others that are going to be coming out, which can't wait to see Law. I'm sure she is ready to go. I just want to give her a little shout out, but I just want to mention that to everybody to go to our actual corporate website, www.MySouthernExposureMediaGroupLLC.com, and you can learn more about our subscription offers that are available. And in addition to that, if you are an advertiser and you want to be on the network, that's one option. But if you are LGBTQ, you can obviously contact us directly by going to www.mySouthernExposure.site. That's MySouthernExposure.site. So if you're LGBTQ, how are you? I'm ready to go. Raji,
Yes.
tell me something good, because I need a little bit of a break before I tell people about how I almost broke my ass falling off a ladder.
Tell me something good. Well, let's see. For me, what can I say? Oh, well, I don't know if it's good. I mean, you fell off your ass this week. I had to go to the doctors because of my lumps and bumps. My black market injections. Every now and then I get a flare up. So I went to my Dr. Martin here in Coral Gables. He's my doctor here in South Florida, and for my for my face, and I had a few injections. So I noticed like it's kind of settling down a little bit because I had to get camera ready for today, honey. I didn't want to have golf balls sticking out. I mean, I'm exaggerating. At one time it was like that, but not anymore, thank God. So I did go to my doctor. I hadn't been to my face doctor in a while, and it was good to see everyone. Because I was the patient that really made a ruckus at the practice there. When my story went viral, it was so funny. The phones were ringing off the hook, and I mean, my doctor has traveled all over the world lecturing and that stuff on this sort of thing now. So yeah, so it was good to see him, and I'll probably go back in 2 weeks so he can give me some more injections and settle it down a little bit more.
Well, you bring up a really good question, actually, Raji. My question is, did you already know that doctor before this whole process started? And did he only start to learn more about what happened to you and potentially happen to other people because of what happened to you? And then he got into a completely new thing?
Yeah, well, okay, so I didn't know him. What happened was because of my activist work I had been doing, and it's so funny. Let this be a lesson to everyone. A lot of the stuff I've done, the work I've done, I haven't been paid for. And I remember back in the day, it was basically humanitarian work, from out of my heart and out of the knowledge in my heart of the knowing that the work that I was doing was important. So, and still is important. So I would have like different people say, "Girl, you need to get paid for what you do. You need to get paid." And don't get me wrong, I don't. It's not. I don't hate money. I love money, but I would always say, you know what? Sometimes it's good to give. Like it's good to volunteer, and it's good to you know donate your time for different causes and that sort of thing. And so what happened, my face was really getting pretty bad, and I was kind of in denial. And I didn't go to a doctor. I was scared to go to a doctor. And I remember one day, the director at the time, Martha, she's actually the founder and director of the Yes Institute in Miami that I've been doing so much work for and not getting paid for it. I was a speaker for them, and it was like I said, many different venues. She called me one day, and she says, Raji, I don't want you to take this you know offensively or personally, but we here at Yes are very concerned about your health. There's something that's really going on wrong with your face. And she says, one of the people on our board is a doctor. And I put a call into him, and I told him about you, and he said he's willing to see you. And long story short, I ended up going to him. He told me, he didn't know how he was going to help me, but I remember when he walked in the room, he says, "Oh my God, sweetie, what did they do to your face?" And I just started crying. And he examined me, and when I left that day, before I left, he grabbed my hand and he said, "Listen, I don't know how I'm going to help you, but I promise I'm going to do my best to help you. I've heard about all of the good work you are doing in the community, and I've heard really good things about you." So I say all of that to say, you don't necessarily get paid in money, but you get paid in other ways. Do you know how much treatment and how over the years, all of the stuff, treatment that I received from him that I could have never afforded on my own? So when you give from your heart, you give out of goodwill, it comes back to you, and it comes back in different ways. So yeah, yeah. And then, he wasn't too let's say he wasn't too up on this sort of situation. I was the one that really got in his face with it, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And, that's when he really uh, started to take more patients on, like myself, that had gone for black market injections and was having, bad reactions. So, yeah. So, what about your ass, honey?
Oh, good Lord.
What about your ass? I want to hear.
I broke it. Not broke it, but pretty damn close to it. So
Mhm.
I really am a good handyman. However, as you get older, things don't necessarily work the way that you want to. So last week, I shared the story of me overworking and getting sick from breathing in concrete dust that took the whole month that we were off, but just actually coincided with my technology not working properly at the house. So it wasn't, I didn't get sick from breathing in concrete dust. The show before we stopped doing the show was when I sounded like Max Headroom or talking from a shoe phone. So that was, the reason why we stopped doing it. So the good thing is that's out of the way, but unfortunately, I was trying to prepare for our recent tropical storm on Thursday of last week and did some of the work on the roof because I know how to fix the roof. Raji's seen my work before, it works. But I fixed most of it. And then the last time that I went up there on Friday, it was starting to rain pretty heavily. So I had actually, I think the exact same pair right here is what I'm going to say. If you get on a ladder in the rain with the flip flop on, you're going to bust your ass. I'm just telling you. So I went up several times without any problem on Thursday and also Friday. And as I quote unquote finished on Friday to make it so that I knew the whole ceiling wasn't going to fall through or the whole roof wouldn't fall through this section. I was so happy. I'm like, oh, I'm done. I threw stuff off the roof. I'm done. I'm good. Let's go. It's Friday night. Woohoo! I'm happy. Joe Biden, Harris, tomorrow. And as I try to step off the roof, my damn flip flop, the one I just showed you all, gets stuck on the rain gutter 12 feet up in the air. Honey, you've been to our house, so you know what I'm talking about. So we got our little back door. You come out, it's got a little awning over it, and then you get a little rain as you go under to the next awning. And then we've got the big bar with the gigantic television, thankfully for my uncle that gave it to us. And I cleared everything away in the area. And luckily, I didn't snap my neck as I fell, but I fell down within probably a 3 to 4 foot section,
That was heavy.
straight down on my ass. But I landed on the right cheek. The funny part, I'm sorry, it's funny. I landed on the right cheek. I didn't land on the wrong cheek. I landed on the right cheek. And the color of my butt the next day was this color right there. My whole right cheek was wrong. It was the wrong color on the wrong damn day. I just tell you. And I slit my head open in the back. It's okay now, but it took a day for it to stop bleeding. And I'm certain that I had a concussion, but I've had several of them before. So all I know what to do. You just stay awake, you lay down, yada, yada, yada. So that was on Friday. Saturday, I couldn't move. Sunday, I had to do the shutters to prepare for this hurricane, tropical storm, whatever. Today's Monday. I'm feeling good. No medication, no hospital stay. All that I did was RICE, rest, ice, I don't remember the other two. Rest, ice, it's RICE. Rest, ice, and compression, and something else. Exercise. Me walking around. I mean, this is the first day today that I'm capable of actually sitting in a chair and not feeling pain. And now my right cheek went from this color to more like this color. So I'm presuming that 3 more days from now, it might be this color.
Yes.
And then hopefully it'll turn back to this color.
Yes, right.
That's what I'm hoping for. So it's just interesting that sometimes things happen to people. And I've had 2 accidents or health issues where as you get older, you start to realize what your limitations are. You really do. Start to realize what you can do, what you can't do. But I love doing yard work and I love fixing my own place. And Ricky loves doing yard work and his mom loves to cook and like all of these different things. So it's like you got to keep doing things that make you happy because going through all this stuff lately, it's kind of hard to find anything to be happy about. So even though I done broke my ass and I didn't poop for a day, I was like, oh my God, I didn't poop. Did I bust my ass? I'm like, I asked Ricky, I'm like, is it possible you can break your ass if you don't poop? Like, I fell on it so hard. I'm like, it sounds stupid to say that. I'm like, did I break my ass? Are there bones in your ass? I didn't fall on my tailbone. And he's like, he was laughing. I'm like, it's not funny. It's like, I haven't pooped since Friday. It's Saturday. It's a whole day of me not pooping. And I pretty much poop every single day at the same damn time. I mean, seriously, it's like seriously, it's like catching the poop train at 7 a.m. every morning.
I heard.
Not to get. I mean, seriously, it's clockwork. And then if I drink too much coffee, that's the coffee cup. Just to let everybody know. So when you see me drink in this cup, this is the coffee cup. When you see me drink in this cup, that's the alcohol. So, and I do both. So, but when I drink the coffee, that kind of brings on the second wave, so to speak. But
wave.
It is the second wave.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna actually, because I said what I just said, I'm gonna transition from something that's funny into something that is extremely serious because of what I just said. Only because that's just the way that my brain thinks, and maybe part of it's concussion, maybe part of it's me. But I think I've done it many times in the past where I talk about something that's funny and then I talk about something serious and we go back to something funny. So y'all know the drill. It's nothing surprising. In reference to the second wave, in the United States, now we have had over 5 consecutive days or 4 consecutive days of over 100,000 cases of COVID.
Unbelievable.
It goes up and down and all around and everything else. In Florida, up and down and all around and everything else as well. But I think the most important thing to look at for people in any country, no matter where you live, are the numbers for the world. Because this is a worldwide plague epidemic problem. No matter where it came from, it doesn't matter. No matter if it's an actual virus or if it's electronics that are creating the problem, or if it's genocide because some people want to get rid of people that they think that are unuseful or too weak or not smart enough or not the right color or whatever the deal is. The numbers have never gone down. The worldwide numbers, I don't know which direction to go. So the worldwide numbers started off at this elbow right here, and they have never gone down since the start of it. There have been little ups and downs, but they've never gone down. This virus is serious. This disease, whatever it is serious. In the United States, Okay, I should say worldwide, we are now getting close to and over within the last week 500,000 to 600,000 brand new cases daily. So we're getting to the point where we are approaching 1 million cases a day. We're more than halfway to 1 million cases a day. And just because you live in a little country where things are okay right now doesn't mean that they're not going to get worse later. And in the United States, the numbers are going this way. They continue to go up and down and up, but we're on an uphill trajectory. And in Florida, the numbers, they go up and down and up and down and up, but the end result is they're still going up. I don't think there's ever been a first wave. I don't think there's ever been a second wave. I don't think there's ever been a third wave. I think everything has still been going upward, but they push out those words, first wave, second wave, third wave, to try to give people a fake sense of security that things are they're getting better, but they're not. Then they get worse, then they get better, then they get worse. But you and I sit in a state where a lot of people only care about money, just like California. And the reality is that I hope things can improve under the new administration, but over the next 2 months, just like I call you on a regular basis and a whole bunch of other people, be careful. Don't be around too many people. Wear your mask, wear gloves, wash your hands, try to stay away from people, all those kind of things. I think that we're kind of stuck in this for probably at least 2 to 3 more years to try to even start to understand things. What do you think, Raji?
Yeah, the numbers have been very, have had me really concerned, especially lately with the last 4 days, 100,000 a day. That's a lot. I mean, 6 more days, it'll be 1 million. I mean, my God, that's a lot. That's a lot of people. They did say that not as many people are dying from it now. I don't know how true that is, but they did say that. And then today on the news, I heard this morning on one of the morning shows that one of the pharmaceutical companies are making really good headway with a vaccine, and they're saying probably as early as December to distribute a little bit, like and I guess the healthcare workers will probably get it first, and then they were saying then the rest of like regular people in society, they were saying by probably April. But it's a lot of probably, maybe, and so who knows? I just I just think we have to proceed with caution, as we've been doing. At least I've been doing it. And I see people out there with their mask and stuff, but then you see it on the news, people that are like, it's my constitutional right if I don't want to wear a mask. And I mean, I think that like, to even go there at this point, it's just courtesy for humanity to wear one and to try and be as careful as possible, because you might not get sick, but you could make someone else really sick if you have it, and say you're asymptomatic and you don't really get it that bad, but someone else could get it and end up in the hospital and ultimately end up dead. So so yeah, we'll see how it goes. When I heard this morning about the vaccine maybe coming out next month and then by March, April, but like I said, it's a lot of probably and maybes, probablys and maybes. So I would say probably, my thinking is, like, what I'm feeling is like next year this time, maybe we'll see like the light at the end of the tunnel, like where the vaccine will come out, have time to be distributed throughout the population. And yeah. I don't know about going on for 3 years, but hey, If it happened, it wouldn't surprise me either. Oh, I think your mute button's on.
Thank you for
Yeah,
your
you're welcome.
support. Thank you for your support. I greatly appreciate it. And unfortunately, I didn't say the words properly the first time, so I think that might have been the guy upstairs making certain that I didn't sound like an idiot. So I've got two questions to follow up with you. Because the vaccine is so new, they supposedly are going to give it to EMS workers, firefighters, yada, 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 public service workers first.
Yeah.
And there's supposed to supposedly be 3 to 4 different versions of it from 3 to 4 different trials that are all started to get close to be ready to be done. But I think the caveat for everybody to understand at home is this process is supposed to take 10 years.
I know.
It's supposed to take 10 years. So I'm just saying, it's not an election. It's not an election. Like I said before, it's not a vaccine election. So my question for you is, like, what I'm comfortable with, I'm curious to see your response. I'm okay with a global federal mandate. Most importantly, state, then federal, and then global rollout of wearing a face mask. I'm good with that because that's something you put on, take off, throw it away. It's not something permanent.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with being forced to be tested. I'm not good with that. I don't want to be forced to have a test. If I want to have a test, I want it to be as easy as possible with anonymity, with no negative ramifications. So I don't want to be in a database to see what my name, address, social security, everything else is because, oh, this person thinks they might have gotten sick. So then we have to do this. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
If I want to be able to do it, they should make it like a home pregnancy test is what I feel personally. And I'm going to suggest that to people who are in positions of power that just like a home pregnancy test, they should be able to do a home COVID test. So if you get a test that you can pay with cash and get a response, okay, let's say you get a positive. Then you're like, oh shit, I think I might be pregnant. Not I'm pregnant, but I might be sick. Then you go out and get a second one. Okay, so that's 2 pregnancy tests, 2 COVID tests. But it's I'm safe at home. No one knows I'm pregnant. I'm okay. I'm gonna go get a third one. I'm just saying, thinking as a woman, even though I'm not a woman, but I think that most women would probably do the same thing. I don't think that instantly when you do a home pregnancy test that you think you're pregnant. So, but I like the privacy, the all of that built in. So I think what they should do, and this is, I'm reaching out to you, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, you need to figure out a way to do a home COVID test that people can buy or is free that they can pick up somewhere. And if you do that, then you'll start to get real numbers. Because some people don't want to go and give their information and be put into a system and taken away from their family members or loved ones and shoved into a hospital and die in a respirator alone. Because that's what has been happening in many cases. So if they can do that portion, then I think we can start to understand what to do next. Mm-hmm. That's my big thing. And then the other thing to follow up with that is, I don't think that it should be a forced mandate or presidential decree that people have to have a vaccination. If you want to be vaccinated, it should be a choice with this vaccination. If you don't, then you shouldn't have to, because there are no reassurances about any vaccine that has ever been made. Some vaccines kill people instantly. Some vaccines work. Some vaccines don't. Some vaccines make things worse. Some vaccines make things better. Some vaccines don't have any problems until 10 years later. Just like you may have had a chickenpox shot, I would presume, possibly, when you were younger. I never had one because those little scars right there on my nose, that's because I actually lived through having chickenpox, and I scratched them off when I was a kid. I never got a chickenpox thing. But then I hear people who had the chickenpox shot, and guess what happened? Oh, now you get shingles. So, like, if chickenpox didn't fuck up your life, now you get shingles. So let's make it twice as nice. So, you parents at home, go ahead and take your kids to get a chickenpox shot. I guess apparently 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, oopsie, sorry. I guess apparently you might have gotten shingles because the vaccine didn't quite work the way that we thought. But it was approved by the FDA.
Yeah, well, it's not really foolproof because I had a shot and I still got chicken pox, so it's
Oh,
not.
wow.
Yeah, I was inoculated, and I still got them. I still got the chicken pox. I got the measles. I didn't get the mumps though, and I got the chicken
Yeah,
pox.
that was that the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR. That was that big, gigantic shot.
Yeah. hmm but I didn't get the mumps, and I didn't get. I mean, and I got the chicken pox twice. I had them one time, and yeah, and it was bad. And then when I was 20, I got it again, but it wasn't as bad. Yeah, and because of that virus, they say you can get shingles later in life. Even whether you have the vaccine or not. If you've had chicken pox, you have that dormant virus in your system, and it can develop into shingles later in life. Yeah. Well, suppose.
That I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm waiting for you because I don't want to interrupt you because I got another topic to toss up for a couple minutes because it's already almost 5 o'clock. So, but I want to bring it up,
Yeah. Well,
the other
no.
topic. So please continue.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No. Because the thing is really with these vaccines and stuff, nothing is like 100%. I think they try to curtail it, and maybe people like even with the flu shot, how we get that, and they say even if you get the flu, it won't be as bad. Like if you get the shot, they tell you, well, even if it may not stop you from getting the flu, but with the flu shot, if you get the flu, it won't necessarily be as bad as if you didn't have the shot. So, but with these things, it's like everyone is different in the sense of our systems handle things differently. So it's just like, you could be allergic to peanuts, and I love peanuts, right? Well, for me, it's a wonderful thing. For you, it would be poison. So, that's how our bodies are. And I think that's how, on an individual basis, people react differently to different sorts of medications and vaccines. Yeah, so I don't know. I think a lot of people are gonna pause and not run out to get that COVID vaccine right away. I don't think they're gonna be doing it. unless it's mandated by the government, but I don't know. I don't know if they would do that.
Well, that was actually my question. That was my question for you, honey? Is that I don't think no matter who is in a position of power that they should mandate that someone has to get a COVID test or that they have to get a vaccination, because all of this is so up in the air. That should never. It's the same thing that I assimilate, I should say, or put in the same group as forcing women to have an abortion or forcing them not to have an abortion. I think the most important thing thinking about that is you can't tell somebody what to do with their body unless you are that person. If it's permanent,
Well, the
you
government
can't force somebody to do that.
the government can't tell you, but they can also say that if you don't get your vaccine, you can't go to school. See, this is the thing. The government can't make you get the vaccine, but they can make it so like you can't send your children to school if they're not if they haven't had their vaccines. The kids can't go to school.
I don't see how that I don't see how that's a problem, to be honest with you, Raji.
Well,
I don't see that not sending your kid to school is a bad thing, considering that before all this started, I'm gonna just put this out there.
Mhm.
How many kids have been killed in school since we had this virus? 0. And how many school shootings have we had for how long? For how many years? So I think personally, I'm just saying, if I had a kid, fuck you with your schools. I would teach my kid at home. Seriously.
yeah, and
My kid's life is more important.
well, and people have done that. People have done that, but I'm saying before COVID, I mean, with COVID now, it's kind of a different world. But like before COVID, parents have to go out and work. They can't sit home and teach their kids. So it's kind of like, now we have the option because of COVID that kids can choose to do it online. But that option was not offered. It wasn't an option that was offered before COVID. Maybe in selective school districts, but for the most part, kids had to go to a brick and mortar school. So what I'm saying is, with these vaccines, like the way the government enforced it is, well, if you want your kids to be able to get educated, they have to have their vaccines, and so that's how the government can make people do it. Now it's a little bit of a different world because you're right. Parents could say, well, you know what, the hell with that. I'll just have them do online school. But I'm talking kind of about like how I'm talking about how before COVID, how it was enforced by the government. And then another thing too, like take something like polio, right? Okay, there's a polio vaccine, right? There were people that died. So many people died from that disease, and we were able in this country to eradicate it pretty much with the vaccine. So, there's pros and cons to it. There's pros and cons to it. But yeah, it's a different world now. So a parent could say, you know what? I'm gonna opt out of regular school and have my kids do online schooling. Yeah, if that can work in the
Well, actually,
well, a parent would have to be able to be home though, especially if the kids are elementary. Like, junior high, high school, that's different. But elementary, there'd have to be a parent or a guardian at home to oversee. And I don't know, that might be an issue for some people, but yeah, so go ahead. What were you saying?
well, actually, you brought up two really good things that you just mentioned, and I want to go over some of that information with you because you are correct in certain things that you said, but then I also want to bring up some things that you might not have had knowledge of before, and you can look it up later as well as the people who are watching at home. I can't remember. I think it's called some kind of an academy I can't remember the name of it, something Academy. It's been around since 1983, K through 12. So it's been around since we were kids, since 1983. It's not something that's new. That you could actually, since 1983, it's been possible that you could learn from home in kindergarten, on the computer, and everything else. And also around the same time period is when the University of Phoenix started. And in addition to that, there are many billions of dollars, so many universities all across the entire world who had been making money before COVID even started. You can get your online degree here. You can get your online degree here. You can get your online degree there. But I do want to agree with you in reference to when children are in the early learning years that they need possibly in-person attention. But for the most part, I think that either the mom or the dad would want to be home, either one of them, naturally, because they want to be around their child.
Want to,
but by the same token,
want to and need to, want to and having the capability to are two different things. You might want to stay home with your kids, but you need two salaries to keep a roof over your head and put food in that refrigerator. So, it's nice if you have the option. Oh, well, I think I won't work. I'll stay home with the kids. That's great if you can do that. But a lot of families are struggling. And besides that, yes, that I heard about that program since 1983. But there's more than just, there's many reasons why parents wanted their kids to go to school. First of all, when kids stay home, they eat more. It's more expensive because they're in that refrigerator constantly. The schools have lunch programs and extracurricular activities so they can broaden their horizons. There was a lot of things that brick and mortar schools offered. And I think that's why before COVID, a lot of parents didn't take that option of having their kids do K through 12 online. It's now that, because of COVID, I think more people are considering it. But for the longest, tell me why, if a program from 1983, all right, existed to now, I'd like to see how many kids around the country enrolled in that, like compared to the population of kids. It wasn't a popular thing. I mean, maybe there was a great number that did, but I'm saying, looking at the whole scope of like the population of children in this country, as opposed to the ones that chose to go online, to go and do the K through 12. There's just different reasons.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, but by the same token, I don't want to negate the fact that the potential has been there since 1983. That's the only thing that I was trying to bring up, that it has been accessible, and there are curriculum that have been around, over 40 years now. Since 1983, it's 2020. So there's over 40 years of curriculum, what works, what doesn't work. I mean, you live down here with me, and you understand, not with me, but in the same area. You know Miss Penny. You see her on TV every single day, probably 10 times a day, and she teaches kids how to spell flashlight. Mm-hmm. A flashlight is something that you use when the lights go out, or whatever. I mean, Miss Penny has been doing that just locally, and there's a lot of material out there that I believe can help people. But I understand what you're saying. But by the same token, I want to acknowledge the fact that we might be. I think we might have been given a great opportunity to look at things differently, because all of our entire lives we've been told, you go to preschool, you go to grade school, you go to junior high school, you go to high school, you go to college, you go to the next college, you go to the next college. You get all these things that you have to do. And there's been so much money with 7 levels of education in just the United States. Your doctorate, your master's, your associates, your high school, your junior high, all of those. And every single quote unquote brick and mortar school gets paid cash money to keep numbers at a certain level. So I think that we have a great opportunity to look at things completely differently than you've been indoctrined to, as well as me.
Oh, I agree.
Because,
but we were talking about vaccines. I agree with you.
oh,
We were talking
Yeah.
about vaccines, and I brought up the reason why kids were forced.
Yeah.
To because that. I mean, we went on a whole nother tangent.
I got on a tangent. I'm sorry.
I know, but I agree with you. Yeah, it is an opportunity to look at things differently and to maybe open your mind to doing things different ways. That's a whole nother topic, and we could probably do a whole show on that. But the thing is,
Yeah.
I was just saying how the government, what the governments did to make people go and get those vaccines.
Have to take a vaccine.
And that was what they used.
Yeah.
The whole thing about school.
Yeah.
That was the thing. You can't
Yeah.
your kids can't go to school unless they get their vaccine. But yeah, even the thing with the online college, like, why do you think so many people went away to college? They didn't want to sit home and be online. Now it's a whole different story. It's a whole different story. Now people are really looking at, like, well, we don't have to do it the way that people have been doing it for, 100 years or however long, So yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna toss up a different topic because exactly what you just said, Raji. We could talk about this one for probably an entire show. Colleges, universities, vaccines, and everything else, and we had done it before. But I want to toss up something that I saw, and I mentioned to you earlier, and I want to just end on this with your comments, and then I'm going to say goodbye, and you as well after that. I want to thank every one of our viewers at home, over 71,000 viewers, 72,000 viewers at this point, and we thank both of you. I should say, both of us thank you. If you want to get a hold of that pretty little girl down there that I'm fingering over there, I'm giving her the finger in a good way. It's Raji at MySouthernExposure.site. If you want to get a hold of Uptight Joseph at MySouthernExposure.site, you know what to do. And don't forget about our brand new phone line. It's right here. It's the pink phone. I might have to change the color of it, but it's 954-767-4632. And it works whether the electric does or not. Old-fashioned landline phone. That phone don't not work. So don't forget about all that. Make certain to visit www.mysouthernexposuremediagroupllc.com to see about the options that are available for you with subscription offers to watch all of the content, especially myself and Raji, or I should say, especially Raji, and then I guess me, because she looks prettier than I do. So she's definitely definitely the star of the show. She's definitely the star of the show. But all joking aside, you and I had a conversation earlier on the phone, and I saw a video on a social media platform, and I called you, or I talked with Rick. I talked with Rick's mom, and I think I brought it up with you also as well about wedding proposals, or I should say vows that people have. And I'm going to break it down real quickly, and I want you to address it, Raji, to see, because you had a little bit more time to ferment the conversation and maybe formulate your words. but there are several different ways to put together wedding vows for ceremonies, let's say. There are quote unquote legal vows, state by state or mandate. And then there are ceremonial vows that are generally speaking for your family members that they come. Sometimes both of those two things are set at the same time because some people go to the courthouse and file legal papers, and then some people just have a church ceremony or wherever the thing is, at the beach or whatever. What I found was interesting is, and I'm putting this question out to everybody at home as well. I saw a video where they were going through the vows, everything was going fine, and the officiant, is that the correct way to say? The person who was officiating?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is that the correct, I don't know the right term for it.
Yeah, I think so.
The person who,
I would say
the officiant who said to the female, do you, I'm sorry, I get tickled pink with it, and it's kind of funny because my butt looks the same color right now. Do you promise to love and obey? And this girl was all happy up until that point. And I don't need to get into color or nothing, but I give her credit. She was a little thick. She was a thick girl. There's a lot of thick girls out there that are beautiful, and everyone has their purpose. And she said, I promise to love, honor, or no, she said, I promise to love and obey. Obey who? Obey what? So my question is, was that, I don't think it's proper for anybody to be put into a situation where they're supposed to obey any human being on the face of the planet. The only person I should say the only thing that human being should obey is their own consciousness or whatever higher power that they believe in. But I think it's interesting because I pulled up a lot of different records of different different religions and everything else. And in some religions, it says love, honor, and obey. Some say love, honor, and cherish. Some say love. Some say obey. It's interesting to see that there's all these different things that fall into place. But what do you think about the idea of the word obey being proposed in a contract of marriage or a ceremony, Raji?
Okay, so in this country, it wouldn't be the contract of marriage. The contract of marriage would be issued from the government, and in government, if I'm not mistaken, there isn't anything about obeying your husband. But in ceremonial weddings, like after you get your marriage certificate, most people have a wedding for their family and friends, and a lot of times they're religious weddings. That's where you get the whole thing about a woman obeying her husband. And I believe that stems from the misogyny of the world. And when, like way, 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 way back, when women were being married off to men and they were trying to keep women suppressed. And that I think that's where a lot of that comes from with that whole thing of obey. Because right away it basically it gives license to the fact that the man is in charge of you. The man makes the rules. Just that's how I take it. I like the word cherish. I like that. I would, if I was getting married, I wouldn't. I would replace the obey with cherish because I think that's a better word for me, and it has a better meaning for me. The only thing that I think really, when it comes to children, you obey your parents to a certain extent. Um, the other thing would be the law. Like there's laws in the country. I mean, some laws I guess were made to be broken, but what I'm saying in general, like people try to obey the law. But yeah, when it comes to marriage, I look at marriage more as a partnership. So there's no boss per se, like boss, making the rules and telling the other person to obey me. It's more of a team, teamwork, a partnership. And so yeah, that's my take on it. That's my take on it. Oh yes. I'm the boss of me, and you're the boss of you, honey. We're all the boss of ourselves.
Oh, girl, honey, child. The funny thing is that my partner of over 11 years bought me this about a year ago. And it was so funny that he bought it because I'm not the boss at all. But it was one of those things where it was a humor thing, where you like buy something and it's like kitschy, or so humorous that it's laughable. But by the same token, then it's also one of those things where I kept it because he got it for me, and I'm not the boss and he's not the boss, because we're both the boss.
Mhm.
Both of us are the boss. We're the boss of ourselves, and we're the boss together. We're the boss as a couple. He's the boss sometimes. Sometimes I'm the boss. Sometimes both of us are the boss. Sometimes no one's a fucking boss. But the idea of the love, honor, and cherish is what I've always heard. I've never heard love and obey before. I don't think I've ever heard or seen a display of obey ever in my life in an official ceremony before. And honey child, I don't know who that girl was. I don't know how long ago that video was, but I wanted to rip through and punch him in the face, because the person who was officiating the situation said it. And then she started it, and then she's like, and then the camera changed to him, and he said, love and obey. And she's like, obey who? Obey what? I'm like, you go, girl.
Yeah.
You go. Because if you're the girl and that only applies to you, then you don't need to be laying down with that man. You don't need to be spending no time up there. And if he's going to be sliding that shit in at the last second as you standing up there, run, girl, run.
Yeah.
Like Forrest. Run, Forrest, run. Run through that forest, lose a couple of pounds, because then you'll get another one even better than that one before. You just keep running. But it was one of those conversations that I just wanted to bring up. And I know it's entertaining, but it's also one of those things that I think that we're going to be going through probably for the rest of our lives, unfortunately, Raji. But I think that we're in a situation now where we have a woman of color who just happens to be a boss. She a boss.
She a boss.
She is a boss.
Yeah.
And y'all got to get used to it. And she's going to break things down. She might be in high heels, or she might be in sneakers. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and to come full circle with the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris mantra. I took down the photos on the websites, but I gave congratulatory remarks on both of them. MySouthernExposure.site, My Southern Exposure Media Group, LLC.com. that said, congratulations, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, with your victory. And we are in a new day, a new time, uncharted territory, and every single one of us have finally been woke. I think that's the right term, woke.
We've been
So
woke.
woke, I think it's woke. I think everybody's woke at this point.
We've been woke.
So we've everybody been woke up. First thing I want to say, we've everybody been woke up. I want to say thank you to Raji Narayan Singh, one of my best friends, I should say. I never thought 10 years ago, the first time I met you was probably 10 years ago. And I didn't know who you were at all. And we bumped into each other in the community. And then 5 years later, we bumped into each other again. And 2 years later, we bumped into each other again. And now we are here together. And it's an honor for me personally that we're working on something together that we both believe in.
Yeah.
And you inspire me. Every single time that we have a conversation on the phone, every single time that we're on the camera together, every way that I can support you, I will. And I love you and I care about you. And that's just not blowing smoke up your ass. I never pictured that I would.
Are you sure?
No, I still am sore. But I mean, I had a lot of trans friends up in Ohio when I was in my 20s. And I only have a handful of those down here. But I never thought that I would have a best friend besides my partner. And I definitely am thankful that you are what I consider my best friend. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for those words, those sweet words. It means so much to me. And I can tell that it's sincere and from your heart. And that's where it really matters. Like, people can talk a lot of shit, but when you can feel the sincerity, like it's coming from their soul. That's when it just means the world. So thank you for saying those things. And before we close, I want to take time out to acknowledge Alex Trebek, who passed away this past weekend. 80 years old. He didn't look 80 at all to me. He looked really damn good. I don't know what he did, what kind of work he had done, but he looked good. So he was the host of the show Jeopardy. He started with the show and he was on TV for over 30 years, a part of many American families, part of the evening routine for many American families. I can remember my father sitting at the dining room table watching Jeopardy. And after the news, after the evening news, and he had the paper in his hand, and he was watching Jeopardy, and like he'd answer a question every now and then. And so I think for a lot of people, Alex Trebek came into our homes every evening and was a part of our growing up, and it connects to memories for a lot of people of growing up. Like, I thought of my dad when I heard Alex Trebek pass away. One of the first things I thought of was my dad sitting at the dining room table watching Jeopardy. So soar with God, Alex, and thank you for touching so many of our lives.
Okay, so it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So y'all got to find something else to watch.
But you got to get the hell out of here. No, let me stop.
So I do want to rethink all of our viewers and remind them to visit the websites. Make certain to save on Mondays from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time available so you can watch us. We have several brand new ways to make the show live. I have a couple more things left to finish off the home studio to make it faster, better, stronger, harder. Actually, I think that's a song, isn't it? Faster, stronger, longer, harder. I think it's a really good video. Faster, stronger, better, harder. I can't remember. Now I'm getting perverted. So I want to say thank you to everybody at home. And then Raji, I'm going to leave it up to you to say good night.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, thanks again, you all for tuning in. And don't forget to like inbox us, visit our website, go to our Facebook page. Any topics that you'd like to hear us talk about, feel free. Let us know because we're open to talking about all sorts of things. And on that note, I want to wish everyone a fantabulous week and love, happiness, peace, good health, prosperity, and many wonderful blessings.